Lord, give strength to those who carry burdens they didn't choose. Give peace to those who left comfort for dignity, and give grace to those trying to make things right after causing harm. Welcome back to Mr. Comfort Stories, your home of comfort, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. If you believe love should always be free, not forced, please like this video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Sunday morning, Zion Grove Baptist Church, Kentucky. The choir swayed in harmony, their voices rising to the rafters like smoke to heaven. Zaria Coleman stood front and center, robe pressed, eyes lifted, voice steady. The congregation was on their feet, clapping and humming along. Her son, Elijah, now 6, sat in the second row, swinging his feet beside Sister Mildred. The music filled the room, until the back door creaked open. Heads turned. A tall man stepped in, dressed in stiff jeans and a starched button-up. His face was older, more lined than most remembered, but there was no mistaking him. Grant Whitlock. Gasps rippled through the pews. The organist hesitated. Even Pastor Jordan blinked from the pulpit. Zaria's voice caught mid-note. She turned. He stood frozen in the doorway, awkward, out of place. In one hand, he held a crumpled bouquet of white roses. In the other, a folded paper, Elijah's drawing. The boy had sketched a small family, a man, a woman, and a child holding hands. Grant held it like it was fragile. Zaria didn't move. He took a step forward. Someone in the back whispered, "Is that who I think it is?" Someone else muttered, "What nerve." Elijah's eyes lit up. "Mama, it's—" Zaria turned to him and held a finger to her lips. Then she looked back at Grant, hard, direct, no fear in her stare. The choir fell silent. Everyone watched her. She lowered the microphone slowly. Her voice was calm but firm. "Excuse me." She stepped off the podium, past Grant, past Elijah, and walked out the side door without another word. That's when the murmurs started. Sister Mildred fanned herself harder. Pastor Jordan rubbed his temple. The choir director cleared his throat. Grant stood alone in the aisle, bouquet in hand, while the church filled with uncomfortable silence. He didn't move. Elijah looked up at him, confused, hopeful. But Zaria was gone. Gone like she had years ago, when she packed her son, her pride, and left behind a life she never asked for. Only this time, the whole town saw it. The chapel was small, country-built, and packed, not because the guests were excited, but because no one could stay away from a scandal. Zaria stood in front of the altar, barely 18, dressed in a borrowed gown 2 sizes too big. The hem dragged across the floor. Her hair had been straightened early that morning by her mother and aunties, but the edges curled now under the Kentucky heat. She looked beautiful, but her eyes held no light. She wasn't smiling, not once. Next to her stood Grant Whitlock, broad-shouldered, over 30 years older, dressed like a man heading to court, not to his own wedding. He didn't hold her hand. He didn't look at her. The pastor cleared his throat, sensing the tension but pressing forward. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness." Zaria heard none of it. The words washed over her like cold water. She was frozen in place, trying not to cry. Her hands trembled. She clenched the wilted bouquet tighter to hide it. Behind her, in the third row, her mother wiped silent tears with a crumpled tissue. Her father didn't look at her at all. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, ashamed but stubborn. He'd made this choice, for the family, for the land, for the debt Grant offered to forgive in exchange for her. Zaria remembered the moment he told her. "I wouldn't ask you if there was another way," he'd said. "You'd still be alive, still be home. You won't want for nothing." She had said nothing, just nodded, numb. She wanted to scream now. The church was a split room, some people crying, others judging. Some whispered prayers, others whispered, "Debt, bride." Her brothers stood like statues. Her older cousin Micah hadn't shown up at all. Her younger sister looked confused, almost scared. Zaria's feet felt like concrete. Her lips were dry. "Do you, Grant Whitlock, take this woman?" "I do," he said quickly. The pastor turned to her. "Do you, Zaria Coleman, take this man?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The pastor's eyes softened. "Zaria?" She glanced at her mother. Her mother nodded once, lips trembling. She began, but her throat burned. "I do," she said finally, barely above a whisper. It felt like betrayal of herself, of the girl she used to be. Grant still didn't look at her. He slid the ring onto her finger without meeting her eyes. They kissed, but not really. It was a dry brush of lips. Cold, mechanical, empty. There was no music, no dancing, no celebration. Only awkward claps, pity stares, and whispered prayers. Afterward, as they stood in front of the church for pictures, the sun shined bright, but Zaria felt cold inside. She leaned in for the photo, barely brushing Grant's arm. Click, flash. That image would follow her for years, not as a memory, but as a warning. Would you marry someone to save your family? Drop A in the comments if you think Zaria had no choice. Like this story and subscribe if you believe love must always be free. A week before the wedding, Zaria stood barefoot on her front porch, listening through a cracked window. Her father sat at the kitchen table with Grant Whitlock. Papers spread between them. A pen rested near the edge. "I've cleared the debt on the corn and the tractor," Grant said plainly. "And I'll cover your medical bills too. I just need it in writing. You promised her hand." Zaria's stomach turned. He said it like he was trading cattle. Her father didn't speak for a moment. Then he sighed. "She's young, but she's smart, strong. You'll have no trouble with her." "She'll do her part?" Grant asked. "She will," her father replied. "She doesn't like it, but she'll do what she has to." Zaria stepped back, her heel hitting the floorboard. A creak. Both men looked toward the door. She stepped into view. "So that's it?" Her father blinked. "Zaria, you sold me off like livestock." "No one sold you," he said sharply. "This family's drowning. You don't know the half of it." Grant stood, calm, emotionless. "This isn't personal, it's survival." She turned to him. "You think I want you?" He didn't flinch. "You'll be taken care of." That sentence hurt more than a slap. She looked at her father. "You taught me to work hard, to hold my head up, and now you're giving me away like a favor." His face tightened. "I'm trying to save this family. You'd rather see your mother lose her medication. You want your sister to leave school." Zaria's voice cracked. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," he said. He slid the contract toward her. "I won't sign anything," she snapped. "You don't have to," Grant said coolly. "You just have to show up." Her mother stepped in then, wiping her hands on her apron. "Zaria, baby, it's not what we wanted. But sometimes life demands things from us." Zaria shook her head, heart pounding. "What about what I want?" Her father stood slowly. "We all have to do things we don't want. You think I wanted to bury 2 uncles, lose the land, watch the bank threaten us every month?" He picked up the pen and signed. Zaria's brothers stood in the hallway. None of them said a word. Her oldest brother looked away. Her youngest clenched his jaw. Not one defended her. Her mother wiped a tear, lips trembling. Grant picked up the pen, walked over, and held it toward Zaria. "You're strong," he said. "You'll make it work." She didn't take the pen. She stared at him for a long silent moment, then turned and walked out of the house. That night, her father didn't sleep. Neither did she. By morning, the agreement was sealed. She hadn't signed it, but her silence did the rest. The Whitlock estate stretched across acres of green fields and white fences, guarded by tall iron gates and silence. From the outside, it looked like wealth. From the inside, Zaria knew it was something else entirely, cold, lonely, controlled. The day she moved in, Grant wasn't home. A housekeeper showed her to a guest room, not the master bedroom. She wasn't surprised. The woman barely looked at her, only mumbled, "Mr. Whitlock said this is yours." It took less than a week for Zaria to realize she was not a wife. She was a live-in obligation. They ate dinner at the same table but never at the same time. Grant always came down late, after she had finished. When he did sit across from her, he scrolled through papers or stared out the window. Not once did he ask how she was. Not once did he touch her unless necessary. Until one night, when she missed her period. Weeks later, the test confirmed it. She was pregnant. Grant's reaction? A short nod. Good. That was it. No hug, no smile, no warmth. Zaria stood in the kitchen afterward, pressing her palms to the countertop. Her throat tightened. Her child would never know what real love looked like. She placed a hand over her belly. "You're not a mistake," she whispered to the baby. "You didn't ask for this. I'll love you even if no one else does." Elijah came screaming into the world on a rainy Tuesday night. Zaria labored alone in a private room at the county hospital. Grant showed up 3 hours late, held the baby for 30 seconds, took a photo, left. Back at the mansion, Zaria nursed Elijah under crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes. She sang lullabies from her grandmother's old church. She wrapped Elijah in hand-me-down blankets from her sister. She paced the nursery floor while Grant held meetings downstairs. He never changed a diaper, never rocked Elijah to sleep, never stayed up through colic cries. Zaria did it all, quietly, without help, without complaint. Each night, she sat in the rocking chair, holding Elijah close, whispering prayers into his hair. "This house ain't a home," she told him, "but I'll make it warm for you." One morning, Grant walked in as she was folding laundry. "I'll be gone for 4 days," he said. Zaria didn't look up. "You always are." He paused. "Is there something you need?" She folded a tiny onesie. "A husband." He didn't respond. She turned slowly to face him. "I gave you a child. I gave you silence. You've never once asked what that cost me." He looked down at his watch. Zaria laughed. Bitter. "Right. That's what I thought." As he turned to leave, she stared after him and said aloud, "A prison with chandeliers is still a prison." The next day, she started packing her soul, not her things. The rain had just stopped. Zaria stood at the front door of the mansion, Elijah wrapped tight against her chest. Her duffel bag sat by her feet, filled with only what she could carry: diapers, baby clothes, formula, one extra dress, and a folder of personal documents. She had no driver, no car, but she had a plan. Earlier that day, Grant had left for a farming expo in Tennessee. He hadn't said goodbye. He never did. She waited until the nanny went upstairs and the night staff settled into the back quarters. Then she walked to the edge of the gravel road, lifted her phone, and called the only person she trusted. Her cousin Brielle arrived in a beat-up sedan 10 minutes later. Zaria didn't cry. She didn't panic. She simply opened the passenger door, sat down and whispered, "Drive." 3 hours later, Grant returned early. The expo had been a mess. Vendors cancelling, investors bickering. He walked into the house with mud on his boots and tension in his shoulders. The foyer was quiet. No Elijah crying. No footsteps. No soft music from upstairs. He walked through the living room. No toys on the floor. He called out, "Zaria?" No answer. He checked the nursery. Empty crib. No folded clothes. No diaper bag. No bottles. His chest tightened. He moved quickly, now opening doors. Hall closet, guest room, even the laundry room. Nothing. He checked the security panel. The system had been disarmed. She planned it. On the kitchen counter, beneath the vase of untouched roses, sat a handwritten note. He picked it up. "You wanted a child. I gave you one. You wanted silence. I gave you that too, but I want my soul back. I won't raise our son in a house where love is missing. I deserve more. So does he. Don't come looking for us until you know how to love without control." No signature. Just her handwriting. He leaned against the counter, eyes scanning every word again and again. He didn't speak, didn't call anyone, didn't yell. He just stood there, still, soaked in the realization that he had everything a man could buy, and nothing that made life worth living. For the next 3 days, Grant stayed home. He cancelled meetings, didn't return calls. The staff tiptoed around him. At night, he walked past the empty nursery and stopped at the doorway. Once, he sat in the rocking chair and stared at the blank wall. There had been laughter here, small giggles, the soft hum of lullabies. Now, silence. One evening, he found a rattle under the crib. He held it in his hand like it was made of glass. Zaria didn't look back. She moved into her cousin's spare room in a neighborhood, lined with old porches and familiar voices. Elijah slept beside her in a crib built by her uncle. She got a job at the beauty salon down the block. She sang again at her childhood church. And every morning she held Elijah close and said, "We're free." It wasn't easy, but it was hers. No mansion, no land, no silence. Just love, noise, community, and a second chance at herself. Back at the mansion, Grant stood outside the master bedroom one night. He looked at the photo on the hallway wall. Their wedding day. Zaria's eyes were hollow in that picture. For the first time, he truly saw it. Not the suit he wore, not the property he married into, but the pain in her silence. He whispered under his breath, "What have I done?" The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Same cracked sidewalks, same corner store where they sold hot pickles in plastic jars. The same sounds of kids laughing in the streets and lawn chairs sitting out front year-round like thrones of survival. Zaria unpacked her bags in Brielle's spare room, a tight space with floral curtains and a mattress pushed against the wall. It didn't matter. It felt more like home than the mansion ever had. Elijah, barely 2, ran around chasing a broomstick, giggling. He didn't notice the missing chandeliers or gold trimmings. All he saw was space to be free. Zaria took a long breath. This time, it didn't hurt. The next day, she walked into Honeycomb Beauty, a tight salon off Washington Ave. She hadn't braided hair for money since high school, but the hands remember what the mind forgets. Miss Tasha, the owner, didn't hesitate. "You still quick with the fingers?" Zaria smiled, fast and gentle. "Good. Saturday's booked solid. You'll be on station 4. And just like that, Zaria had a chair again. A purpose. She worked 3 days at the salon and picked up part-time shifts at the daycare near the Baptist church on 4th Street. Between diaper changes and edge control, she found rhythm again. At night, she and Brielle sat on the porch steps, watching the streetlights hum. "You okay?" Brielle asked one evening. Zaria sipped her lemonade. "I'm better than I've been in a long time. And him?" Zaria paused. "Still back there, in that cold house. I don't care what he does. I'm done." But her voice wavered on the last word. Done didn't mean unhurt. Done didn't mean unscarred. Mornings were early. Zaria would rise before the sun, fix a warm bottle, and wake Elijah with soft kisses. He always smiled first thing, sleepy and sweet. That smile gave her strength. She walked him to daycare on foot, one hand holding his, the other clutching her work bag. Rain or shine. Sometimes they stopped to pet the neighbor's cat. Other times they raced to the gate like it was a game. "I win," Elijah shouted one morning, giggling with victory. "You always do, baby," Zaria said, breathless from running but full of joy. At the salon, she worked magic. Mothers brought daughters, grandmothers brought stories. The chair was more than a job. It was therapy, connection, healing. On Saturdays, Elijah stayed with Miss Ruby, the church pianist who had known Zaria since she was a girl. He helped water her plants, fed her cat, and occasionally napped in her lap. Zaria made sure he never felt her absence too long. She spent Sundays with him fully, pancakes, sidewalk chalk, and choir practice. The church became their sanctuary. Not just the building, but the people. Sister Latonia brought casseroles. Brother Keith gave her a used bike for Elijah. Miss Ruby taught him piano notes. Zaria didn't ask for help. They gave it anyway. One night, as she rocked Elijah to sleep, he whispered, "Mama, I like it here." Tears filled her eyes. She kissed his forehead. "Me too, baby. Me too." Grant knew where she'd gone. It hadn't taken much. A friend from town mentioned seeing her at the beauty shop. Another, said she was working at the daycare. He didn't approach. He watched. From the truck parked across the street, hidden behind tinted glass. He saw her laughing with co-workers. Saw Elijah running ahead of her on the sidewalk, dragging a little toy truck. He didn't smile. He ached. One afternoon, he watched as she stopped to talk to a man outside the barber shop. They laughed, slapped palms. She touched the man's arm while laughing at something he said. Grant gripped the steering wheel hard, not with jealousy, with shame. She looked alive in that moment, more alive than he ever remembered her being inside his house. Back at his estate, the staff tiptoed around him again. His land was lush, profits high, but his bed was cold, his table empty. He missed his son's silly questions, missed hearing small feet on the tile. He'd made his choices. She'd made hers. Now, every time he saw her light, it reminded him how long he lived in the dark. His name was Anthony. He worked at the print shop next to the beauty salon. Kind, funny, a single father of a teenage daughter. One day, he brought Zaria a sweet tea with 2 lemons and said, "You look like someone who could use a lunch break." They shared a sandwich on the bench out front. Nothing serious, just light, simple, easy conversation. Anthony didn't ask about her past. He asked about her present, her dreams, her laugh. He asked what Elijah liked, and when he met him, brought him a Hot Wheels car. Zaria didn't fall fast. She didn't even fall far. But she smiled. She let herself feel like a woman, not just a mother, not just a survivor. One night, Grant saw them through the glass of the diner window. Elijah sat in a booster seat, laughing. Anthony had ketchup on his cheek. Zaria wiped it gently with a napkin. Grant stood outside, unnoticed, heart sinking. It wasn't rage he felt. It was grief. He had everything she gave, and treated it like a transaction. Now another man was earning what he threw away. Zaria was leaving choir practice when she saw him, standing near the back of Zion Grove's community center, out of place, uncomfortable, out of his world. Grant. He wore a simple jacket, no boots, no truck, just stood there, awkward, holding a paper bag. Zaria stopped cold. Her heart ticked faster, but her face stayed calm. "What are you doing here?" "I heard the center needed supplies," he said, holding the bag out. "Paper towels, markers, some snacks." Zaria didn't move. "Why?" He didn't blink. "Because it matters to you. And because I never gave where it counted." A few members walked by, whispering. Zaria looked at the bag, then back at him. "You're not going to guilt me into talking. I'm not here for that. Then leave it on the table and go." He nodded once, walked past her, set the bag down, then turned to leave. No argument, no grand speech, just quiet effort. Zaria stood frozen as the door clicked shut behind him. It was the first time he'd ever shown up on her turf without trying to control the room. She didn't know how to feel, but part of her whispered, "This feels different." Later that night, Zaria stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing Elijah's teeth. He giggled at the foam bubbles, kicking his legs. "Don't forget the corners," she said, laughing. He looked up. "Is Daddy coming back?" Zaria froze. She knelt beside him. "Do you miss him?" "Sometimes," he said. "But you're more fun." She hugged him tight, heart twisting. When he finally went to sleep, she sat in the dark with her thoughts. Could people really change? Could a man like Grant, prideful, distant, cold, become someone who didn't just show up but stay? She didn't know, but she knew the version of him who dropped off paper towels today wasn't the same man who signed her life away years ago. Still, one moment doesn't erase years of silence. Can people really change? Would you let someone back into your life if they showed real effort? Comment yes if you believe in second chances. Comment never if some doors should stay closed. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if you believe love should never be forced. The flyer read, Zion Grove Elementary Winter Recital, featuring the One Stone Grade Choir. Grant stared at it from his truck seat, hands still dirty from morning fieldwork. One of his suppliers had casually mentioned the event at the feed store. That's how he found out. He arrived early but parked down the block, afraid he'd be turned away. Inside the school gym, the folding chairs were mismatched, and kids in Santa hats ran around with sticky candy canes. Parents greeted each other, music buzzed from old speakers, and volunteers passed out warm juice boxes. Grant stood by the door, invisible and nervous. The curtain rose. Elijah stood on the third row, between two taller boys, his curls neatly combed, his little tie crooked. He squinted into the crowd, looking for his mother. He spotted her first. "Mama," he whispered, waving. Zaria smiled and waved back. Then Elijah froze. His tiny eyes landed behind her, on Grant. A slow recognition, a wide smile. He waved again. Grant raised a hand, awkward, barely noticeable. Zaria turned, startled. Her eyes narrowed. Their son started singing, off-key but proud. Grant didn't blink the entire time. When the show ended, children poured into the audience, hugging parents, collecting cookies. Grant stayed back, watching. Zaria approached him, jaw tight. "Why are you here?" "I wanted to see my son." "You had years to be present, and now you show up in a school gym?" He glanced at Elijah, then back to her. "I didn't know how else to start." "You don't start by showing up uninvited. This ain't your world anymore." She turned and walked away, scooping Elijah into her arms. Grant stayed until the lights went off. No photos, no goodbye, just his own silence again. The church kitchen smelled of cinnamon and grease, fried pies cooling on wire racks for Sunday sale. Zaria was scrubbing a pot when she heard boots behind her. She didn't turn. "Zaria," Grant's voice said, low. "I asked you not to come to the recital," she replied, hands still in soap. "I never promised I would stay away." Now she turned, eyes flashing. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I miss him. I miss you. You miss what you lost, not what you loved." "That's not fair." "You want fair? Was it fair when I begged you to hold our son and you said you were too busy?" Her voice rose. "Was it fair that I birthed a child for a man who couldn't look me in the eye?" He stepped closer. "I didn't know how to be a husband or a father." She scoffed. "You knew how to buy land, how to manage people. But love? You couldn't buy that, so you ignored it." He looked away, silent. Zaria's voice cracked. "I didn't leave because I hated you. I left because staying was killing me." He nodded, softly. "I believe you now." She wiped her hands dry and walked past him. At the door she paused. "Don't think one church pie sale makes you part of my world. It takes more than showing up to be someone's father." And then she was gone. It was cold that Saturday, wind biting through coats and nipping at ears. Zaria stood behind a folding table, handing out canned goods at the Zion Grove Community Drive. Elijah helped load cereal boxes into bags. Grant showed up in a brown jacket, not fancy, not flashy. He carried 2 cartons of donated juice and quietly asked, "Where should these go?" Sister Latonia blinked, surprised. Over there, by the fruit stand. No one said anything else. He stayed silent, worked without complaint. He carried crates, unloaded sacks of flour, sorted green beans, even swept up trash after the line thinned. Zaria saw him. She didn't say a word. At one point, Elijah dropped a can on his toe. Grant laughed, a full, hearty laugh. Elijah giggled and said, "Sorry." Grant winked. "All good, buddy." Zaria watched from across the lot, her stomach tight. He wasn't performing. He wasn't giving orders. He was serving, for once. That night, when Brielle asked how the drive went, Zaria hesitated. "He came," she said. "Did he act a fool?" "No," Zaria admitted. "He just worked." The flu hit hard that season. Zaria had been pushing herself. Daycare shifts, salon appointments, choir practice, Elijah's school meetings. Her body gave out after Thursday night rehearsal. One minute she was walking to her car, the next She was on the pavement, vision spinning, hands trembling. Brielle called an ambulance, but Grant, who had just pulled into the parking lot to pick up donation bins, saw it happen. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Zaria." Her skin was clammy, her lips pale. "I got you," he said, lifting her gently. "It's okay." She tried to push him away. "Don't." "Quiet," he whispered. "I'm not trying to control. I'm helping." She passed out. At the hospital, he sat by her bed, while Elijah played with the nurse's stethoscope. When Zaria woke up, her eyes landed on Grant, half asleep in the chair, coat still on, elbows resting on his knees. "Where am I?" "Safe," he said quietly. "You passed out. Why are you still here?" He looked at her directly. "Because this time, I stay." Miss Lorraine opened the screen door with a scowl. "You got nerves," she said. "Standing on my porch like you got a clean record." Grant nodded. "I don't. You put my daughter through hell." "I know. You treated her like furniture." He nodded again. "I have no excuse." She folded her arms. "What do you want?" He held out a bag of groceries. "Not to impress you. Just to show up." She didn't move. He set the bag down. "I came to say I was wrong. About everything. About thinking I could buy her time, her love, her peace. I can't. I never could." Miss Lorraine studied him. "What made you change?" "Elijah. Her strength. And loneliness." She softened, barely. "It's not forgiveness you're looking for. It's permission." He didn't answer. She stepped back inside, muttering, "Don't waste your second chance, Grant. We ain't handing out thirds." That night, after a community movie screening, Elijah sat beside Grant on the church lawn. They shared popcorn, watched cartoons on a white sheet hung between two poles. Out of nowhere, Elijah asked, "Do you love Mommy?" Grant blinked. "Yes." "I always did." "Then why did she cry so much before?" Grant's throat tightened. "Because I didn't know how to show it." Elijah nodded slowly. "Can you try now?" Grant looked at his son. "I'm trying every day." Elijah leaned against him. "Okay." Grant exhaled. Forgiveness had never sounded so small, or so heavy. Grant started bringing Elijah lunch at school on Fridays. Nothing fancy, just a sandwich, juice, and a note. He started helping Zaria close up the salon when she had late clients. He once fixed Miss Ruby's broken porch railing without being asked. No cameras, no praise, just presence. He sat in on choir practice quietly, washed dishes after church socials, planted flowers outside the community center. Bit by bit, the community noticed. Whispers changed. Zaria noticed too. One night, she found a wrapped meal on her porch with a sticky note. "Eat, please." She smiled. A small one, but it was real. It was late after a church fundraiser. Zaria sat alone, cleaning the kitchen counter. Everyone else had gone. Grant walked in, drying his hands. "I can finish this," he said. "I got it." He didn't argue. He wiped the opposite end in silence. She paused, looked up at him. "You really don't stop now, huh?" "No," he said, meeting her eyes. "Not when it matters." She turned away, wiping again. He stepped closer, but not too close. "Zaria," he said gently. She turned. He reached forward, slow, careful, and placed a kiss on her forehead. It lingered, not as a claim, but as a thank you. She didn't step back, and he didn't press. He just stood there, silent. For once, no words were needed. Zaria journaled that night. She hadn't written in months, maybe years, but her pen moved like a whisper. "He's not the man I married. He's not the man I feared. He's not perfect, but he's present." She closed the notebook, hands trembling. Then she peeked into Elijah's room. He was asleep, clutching the little wooden truck Grant had carved. She sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know where this road would lead, but for the first time, she wasn't walking it alone. If this part touched you, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs hope, because sometimes growth doesn't shout, It shows up quietly. Every single day. Subscribe to Mr. Comfort Stories for more stories of love, healing, and real-life redemption. The sanctuary was packed for Youth Sunday. Families squeezed into pews, fans fluttered, and Sister Latonia adjusted the sound system for the 100th time. Zaria stood near the altar, holding the mic. Elijah sat front row, legs swinging under the bench. Beside him was Grant. He had arrived quietly, didn't try to speak to her, didn't ask for attention. She saw him only when she stepped forward and the light shifted, his eyes locked on her. The piano began. She closed her eyes and let the first note out. Low, controlled, emotional. I almost let go. Felt like I just couldn't take life anymore. Her voice carried pain, history, hope. By the second verse, the room was still. Even the children stopped moving. Grant sat frozen, his chest tight. He remembered her first time singing years ago, back when they were strangers under one roof. But this wasn't the same woman. This woman stood tall, chose her words, carried her voice like it was power, not survival. Tears gathered in his eyes. He didn't wipe them. By the final note, people were on their feet. But Grant didn't clap. He stood slowly, looked at her like he finally saw the whole picture. And Zaria, she didn't smile, but her eyes softened, for the first time in a long time. After Sunday service, everyone filed into the fellowship hall for food and laughter. Zaria was in the back helping Sister Ruby prep plates, when she noticed something strange. The trash bins were empty, the folding chairs stacked, the lemonade pitchers refilled. She peeked through the window and saw him. Grant, still in his church clothes, sleeves rolled, wiping down tables. No one asked him, no one guided him. He just moved, calmly, quietly serving. When a child spilled juice, he knelt and cleaned it. When the broom was needed, he found it. He didn't try to make conversation, didn't ask if she noticed. He simply acted. Brielle leaned over to Zaria and whispered, "He different now." Zaria didn't respond. She just kept watching him, remembering all the times she felt invisible while living in his house. And now, he was the one sweeping behind her silently. It was the first time she didn't feel like she had to explain her worth to him. He saw it, and respected it, with silence. It was a Tuesday morning. Zaria was late getting ready for work. Elijah sat at the table coloring, while Grant scrambled eggs and flipped toast. Zaria moved around the kitchen like a blur. "Elijah, grab your shoes. They're by the door." "Okay, and your lunchbox." "I got it," he shouted cheerfully. Grant plated food and placed Elijah's favorite cup next to it. Zaria glanced up. "You don't have to. I want to," he replied, calm. As Zaria adjusted her earrings, Elijah grabbed his backpack and looked up at Grant. "Hey, Dad, can you zip this?" The word came out so natural, like he'd always said it. Zaria froze mid-motion. Grant looked stunned, but didn't show it. He knelt and zipped the bag, then gently tapped Elijah's shoulder. "Ready, champ?" "Ready." Zaria turned slowly. Their eyes met. Grant didn't say anything. He didn't smile or make it a big moment. But in that quiet nod between them, something shifted. It wasn't about winning her back anymore. It was about showing up, for good. The house was quiet after dinner. Elijah had fallen asleep on the couch during a cartoon, mouth slightly open, his drawing pad on the floor. Zaria tucked a blanket over him and returned to the kitchen, where Grant was rinsing dishes. "You don't have to wash those," she said. "I don't mind." She leaned against the doorframe. "He called you Dad today." "I know," he said softly. "I'll never forget it." She folded her arms. "You've changed. I'm trying to be the man you both deserve." She walked forward and picked up a plate to dry. For the next 10 minutes, they worked in silence, shoulder to shoulder. Then she glanced sideways. "We usually have dinner at 6. If you want to keep coming, you can." He paused. "I'd like that." She met his eyes. "No expectations," she added. "None. Just time." She nodded. That was all she had to say. It wasn't a reunion. It was a welcome. It wasn't a grand moment. No music, no roses, no thunderstorm kiss. It was one Thursday evening. Zaria sat on the porch, feet up, sipping tea. Grant sat beside her, quiet. They watched Elijah play with chalk on the sidewalk. Zaria spoke first. "Do you remember our wedding?" He exhaled. "More than I'd like to." "I was scared," she said. "You were stone." "I was a fool." Silence. She leaned her head slightly toward him. "You ever want to do it right?" He turned. Every day, his hand brushed hers on the armrest. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up. He took it. Fingers laced. That night, in the quiet of her living room, with Elijah sleeping peacefully, she let him kiss her. Slowly, respectfully, no pressure, no rush. It wasn't about making up for the past. It was about building something better. No guests, no expensive dress, just Zaria in a white sundress and Grant in a simple shirt and slacks. Elijah stood between them, holding 2 wildflowers from the garden. Brielle officiated, using a handwritten note. Zaria held Grant's hands. "This time, I say yes because I want to, not because I have to." Grant swallowed hard. "This time, I vow to protect your peace, not purchase your silence." They exchanged new rings, simple bands from a flea market. Elijah clapped. Zaria cried. Grant kissed her hand. They sealed it with a soft kiss under the backyard tree where Elijah once made mud pies. This time, the love was real, and it was free. Zaria's voice came over softly in narration as she watched Elijah play and Grant grill chicken in the backyard. Sometimes life gives you what you asked for too early, and when it does, you bleed quietly. But healing isn't loud. It's in the hand that helps clean up, the voice that listens instead of defends, the apology that comes without conditions. She smiled to herself and walked outside, calling, "Dinner's ready." Elijah came running. Grant followed. They sat as a family, not a perfect one, but a present one. If this story moved you, subscribe for more. Share it with someone who believes change is possible. Because love only matters when it's chosen, and forgiveness only works when it's backed by action. Zaria sat on the porch steps one warm evening, sipping sweet tea while Elijah ran barefoot through the grass. Grant was in the backyard garden, teaching him how to pull weeds without damaging the roots. She watched them, her hand resting gently over her heart. Years ago, love had been something forced on her, packaged in contracts, trapped inside cold walls. Back then, it was less about connection and more about survival. No one had asked her if she wanted to love. No one gave her time to figure out who she was. They told her to do her duty. That kind of love isn't real. It's arrangement, obligation, bondage in disguise. Zaria's heart had been chained by debt, duty, and pressure. But now? Now love looked like Grant rinsing mud off Elijah's shoes without complaint. It sounded like laughter coming from the kitchen at breakfast. It smelled like oxtail stew simmering on the stove because Elijah said he missed Grandma Lorraine's recipe. It was soft, voluntary, mutual. This time, when Grant touched her, it wasn't claiming. It was asking. This time, when she kissed him, it wasn't payment. It was peace. Love must be free to matter. If it's built on fear, debt, or pressure, it's not love. It's captivity dressed in ceremony. Now, Zaria knew the difference, and she wanted women watching this story to know it too. You don't owe your life to someone just because they gave you help. Love is only real when you get to choose it. Elijah had 10 new toy trucks, not because Grant bought them all at once, but because, week by week, he'd show up with something thoughtful, something tied to Elijah's curiosity. One week, it was a red fire truck. Next, a tow truck because Elijah asked how broken cars get moved. Another week, a mini dump truck after they passed a construction site together. But the toys weren't the gift. It was Grant kneeling on the floor, elbows on the rug, playing with him. It was the way he stopped whatever he was doing when Elijah had a question. It was the pancake Saturdays where they made a mess, burned the first batch, and laughed about it. Grant used to think being a provider meant being busy, bringing home money, managing property, solving grown-up problems. But no paycheck replaces a hug. No land title replaces a bedtime story. You can buy clothes. You can't buy time. Zaria used to do it all alone, tucking Elijah in, calming his fevers, teaching him prayers. Now, she saw her son light up when he heard the sound of Grant's truck approaching, not because of what was in the truck, but because he was in it. Presence is parenting, not appearance, not promises, not price tags. The most expensive thing a child needs is something no one can buy: time. Pride made Grant believe silence was strength, that being right was more important than being present. That saying "I didn't know how" was weakness. So he said nothing, did nothing, until he lost everything, until Zaria walked away with their son and left a note that shook his world. It took seasons of solitude for him to see that pride is a wall, one that keeps help out, keeps truth buried, and keeps people lonely. Grant had to learn how to step down from his imagined high place. He showed up with paper towels instead of demands. He stood in food lines and handed out milk cartons instead of status. He held sick buckets when Elijah caught a bug. He apologized to the mother of the woman he once thought he owned. None of that erased what he had done, but it started to heal what pride had broken. Zaria didn't forgive him because he begged. She forgave him because he humbled himself, because he listened, because he admitted his wrongs without adding. But pride destroys homes, families, hearts. But humility rebuilds, one honest step at a time. Grant used to wrinkle his nose at black church music. Too loud, he thought. He used to avoid community potlucks. Too crowded. He once told Zaria to stop singing late at night. "We're not in the hood anymore," he'd said. But now, he stood clapping along with Sister Ruby at revival. He brought pies to the potluck and asked if he could help slice the cornbread. He sat in on choir rehearsals and complimented Zaria's voice, not because he was pretending, because he was learning. Zaria's culture had always been painted as less than in his world. Now he saw its richness, its power, its healing. He saw how community gathered when someone's light bill was overdue, how elders checked in on each other's kids, how people danced without shame and praised without apology. He started seeing Zaria, not as a woman from a different world, but as someone whose world made her stronger, richer, fuller. Culture matters, because culture raises us. Culture holds us. But growth matters too, because growth allows love to move across lines. Grant didn't erase who he was, but he grew enough to respect who she was, and to raise Elijah with both sides honored. The future doesn't need domination. It needs mutual respect and real growth. Zaria never forgot the wedding day, the coldness, the lack of choice, the way her father handed her over with trembling hands and Grant received her like a signed deed. She never forgot the years of silence, of lonely nursing nights, of hearing her son call for a man who never answered. So, when Grant started showing up, she didn't rush forgiveness. She watched. She listened. She tested. And every time he said he'd show up, he did. Every time he said he'd help, he did, without asking for credit, without expecting entry into her heart. That's how trust begins again. Not with words, but with proof. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing. It doesn't mean reopening a wound without proper care. It means watching them bandage the part they hurt over and over until you feel safe again. And only then, letting your guard drop a little. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is knowing what your peace costs and making sure it's never stolen again. Zaria gave him that forgiveness, but only after he earned it. And because he did, their love this time was real.